Comment, bienvenue, welcome one and all to I'm very proud to say, the second Property Quorum, an idea that has come about by Hamish, McLay, who is my esteemed colleague on my right, and I have some amazing guests. Now, one of our firm members of the Property Quorum, of course, is Chris Gilsenan, a gentleman from home. We do have Juliet, who is on her way, stuck in traffic, I believe, but we have an esteemed guest, and in the name of Elliot Benson. Now, Hamish McLay, some of you probably will know this, most of you will know this, is a gentleman who sits there at the front line of property sales, dealing with searching and conveyancing in general terms. Chris is an accomplished property developer and also investor, and so I'm afraid is right at the sharp end of the whole thing. And of course, Elliot Benson, the poor man beset by us all, desperately trying to arrange finances where devils fear to tread. Welcome one and all to Property Quorum. Everybody good in good spirits? Upbeat?
Interesting morning as I stepped or walked towards the office. This fine scattering of sort of icy particles wasn't slippery, but it definitely nature's going through its slowing process, which it does this time of year. But there's some manic things going on within the property industry. I know estate agents and the like try and hike everything up and sort of say, hey, look, get on. But by golly, I mean, particularly work with the likes of Chris and Elliot, there is so much opportunity for people at the moment to actually listen to the experts sort of out there, not me. The guys that we have, the guys we have with us today are the ones that are going to help them sort of move forward, particularly. But there's lots happening.
Yes, but I would say, I would hasten to add, Hamish, you may not be an expert in all their fields, but you're certainly an active commentator. So what is it? Give me some, start us off. What sort of things have you noticed that are causing ructions?
I think general opportunity. Largely, we had an inference last year from the media, from governments, and all sorts of people saying also what things weren't happening. Yet in the background, we always have this sort of little hive of activity, and we notice from what Chris has actually sort of been saying that. I mean, I keep an eye out and sort of see what he's speaking about, and there are things happening, and he has been so busy. And when I've actually looked to see what Elliot's been doing this year so far, the number of people that are approaching him to ask what is available mortgage-wise, and the people he's actively encourages to speak, it really is. And I think, Gareth, when both of us have spoken last year, some of the stuff we've had to sort of put up with, largely from what the media's been saying. But here we have a wondrous sort of opportunity, I think, for if people generally want to do something, there's a proven ground out there now that even though the ground out here in Oxfordshire is a little bit on the sort of frosty side, the rest of it, the rest of things that are sort of going on are really sort of helping out, I think.
All right. So, Chris, from your perspective, I mean, Hamish has been talking about perhaps some of the interesting conditions you were under last year, but towards the end of it, you were, I wouldn't say quite skipping with glee, but you weren't downhearted like a lot of investors appear to be.
No, I think the thing is, the market's always in flux. It's always changing. It's always different, and you have to be able to adapt to those conditions. I think over the last 12 months, a lot of people have been sat on their hands. They may have had cash in the bank and they've just been waiting it out, which I totally get. I totally understand. They want to make sure their next purchase is a good one, and with I'm sure Elliot will be able to tell us shortly that the rates over the last 12 months, the lenders have been making hay. But they've made their hay now. So you're starting to see those swap rates coming down, the actual interest rates coming on the mortgage products coming down. And the gates are opening. The gates are starting to open. So, yeah, we're seeing a lot more activity in the market, definitely in the front end. There's the estate agents are busily getting all their viewings booked in, and people are starting to wake up from their slumber. So, yeah, there's a lot more competition in the market at the moment.
Well, it's marvellous. Just so you know, I saw Juliet suddenly pop up in the background. I think she may be struggling to connect, but hopefully once she's connected, we can bring her on board. But before any further, Elliot, would you give us your impressions of what Chris has been referring to? Apparently, according to Hamish, you've been under all sorts of turmoil.
Yeah, so we had obviously the rate rises. The thing over the past kind of year, they've gone up and then they've come down and they've gone up again, and now they're sort of decreasing quite rapidly. But I've noticed I had the busiest December I've ever had as a mortgage advisor ever, with, and it was new business, people looking to buy. So people, first time buyers, home movers, who had seen that rates were starting to lower, who maybe held off last year, and that's fed into January as well. The difference with what's happening now is if I do someone's mortgage now, I'm redoing it probably 4 or 5 times before they move in, because rates are falling in that manner. And you're trying to make sure that when they actually do move in, they're on the cheapest deal possible. So it's a totally different situation than it was previously. We've gone from a period where if I did someone's mortgage on a Monday, by Friday the rate might have been increased, whereas now
That's
if I do someone's mortgage on a Monday,
that's ridiculous. It's a completely movable feast.
whereas now mortgage on a Monday, by Friday there could be a cheaper rate. Obviously there will be a flaw to that, but yeah, so it's been quite hectic.
So is everybody sort of hanging on to everything, waiting the last minute in the hope that they can get that slightly improved mortgage offer?
Yeah, what's happening at the moment is, so I'm applying for a mortgage. So once the mortgage is applied for, the rate's locked in, and I'm just going back every so often to check and switching the product to a lower rate multiple times before they move. There is now, because some lenders are bringing out significantly lower rates, there are some clients who are potentially wanting to switch to a new lender, as opposed to staying with the same lender, which poses more difficulties, because if you get to 2, 3, 4 weeks before completion and you're switching your lender at that point, then you're playing a very risky game, because this, it's a new valuation, it's a new credit search.
Right.
That is something that people are looking at as well currently.
So and sorry, you were going to say, Hamish?
I just sort of wondered. I mean, one of the comments, and this is something I picked up from listening to Alex. I'm a great advocate for working with independent providers wherever possible, because practically they rely on their reputation. They're not relying on massive volumes sort of here and there. And really listening to Elliot, particularly over the last few weeks, is the way in which an independent mortgage advisor like Elliot will actually consistently be looking at improving the situation for that buyer. Whereas very often on the larger companies, because they're volume related, and I mean, Juliet, was good to see Juliet here, and she was speaking in terms of what goes on from the legal side of things. Many people are involved with the factory sort of type of conveyancing sort of process are just far too busy to look at the real interest of that person that's buying the property. And somebody like Elliot, and this is what's so good about independent providers, is to actually find people like it, because they will look and find the best deal for you and will consistently do that. That's why they're so busy, of course.
Well, it's a shame what you may have seen that Juliet, who I'm very keen to get commentary from, popped in. She's having a small amount of difficulties, technical issues. Do you know, I used to be an internet engineer, and if you knew how it was all held together, you'd be amazed it works at all, frankly. But I'm pleased to say that she is trying. Chris, have you noticed that because the mortgage variance, because there's so much change constantly at the back end, that can put off sellers?
Not so much putting off sellers. I think that the market is still very much demand led. It's still
You've said that before, actually.
Yeah, but there's still not a huge amount of stock if compared to going back 10 years. I think the fact that prices have gone up so substantially has reduced the opportunity for other people. It's reduced their mobility. So, for example, you may have had a family of 3 or 4 that they may have been at one point looking for a larger house. Instead, they might be considering extending it up into the roof space, or converting the garage into an additional bedroom and making do with what they have. And just because those extra price jumps to a bigger, larger house can be so prohibitive. So no, I'm not too convinced on that one. I think it's very much still demand led. I think sellers will sell when they need to sell, and obviously each of those different circumstances are different for sellers, which brings them to the market. Those that can wait will wait for the price. They will hold out, and you see that on Rightmove all the time. That how long listings have been online. It's actually one of the things that we look for. The length of time that a listing has been on the market.
I don't know whether because you and I are having a further discussion. Chris and I have regular discussions online as well about various topics. And one of the topics you mentioned that you might be talking about was the indicative local housing allowance rates.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that last week, and the impact that that's going to have, or is, I'm expecting it to have. So it will push up prices ultimately. That will be the end result of it. But the LHA rates that were announced in the budget that were going to be unfrozen in April, in the last couple of days, the government's released a white paper on what those rates are looking like. So there was an expectation that they were going to be around 25 to 40% if you were going back to the 2019, the last time they were unfrozen. So the gap between 2019 and now, rental rates have gone bananas, and the LHA rates, the local housing allowance rates, are linked directly to the open market rates, about 30th percentile.
So does that mean we're heading definitely towards generation rent? And if so, Elliot, I'm going to bring you in on this. How is that going to affect mortgages?
I think there'll always be people looking to buy. There'll always be people looking to buy, remortgage.
If people are looking to buy, won't that necessarily mean that mortgage lenders will perhaps make them more onerous to get hold of?
Potential. No, I think lenders want to lend. Like they still want to lend. They want the business through the door, which is why we're seeing the sort of price war at the moment. Your major lenders like your HSBC, like your Halifax, like they've got the money to lend, so they will want to do it. I think there's always people in the UK, especially, they always want to. That's like they aspire to own a property, so I think there'll always be that demand, and it always tends to come down to, especially in the market that I deal with, which is your first-time buyers generally, and your home movers. It more often than not, if someone is entering the market, it's less the interest rate. If I quote an interest rate to someone, if someone is buying a house the first time, and I say your rate's going to be 6%, until I translate that to a monthly payment, they don't really sort of it's budgeting month to month, and if the monthly payment fits into the budget, then they will likely buy a property. So I think there'll always be a demand, because I think the sort of natural sort of progression that in the UK that people sort of look to do is rent and then buy generally. Unlike in certain other like European countries where people will rent more often, it's rent and then buy, and if it's affordable, I think people will still do it.
Well, I mean, I think, Chris, you're only too painfully aware of this, are you not? Because you can
I think
see
Elliot's actually hit the nail on the head. It is down to affordability. I believe that where more than a third of your salary, your third of the monthly income is going on rent or a mortgage, you're classed as below the poverty line. And I think that's impacted a lot of people over the last few years. So I think wage increases is starting to have the opposite effect against that and push people back over. But yeah, there's definitely a tipping point that if you're spending a certain amount of your monthly budget on housing, just like if you spend a certain amount of your monthly budget on food, there's a problem. I think we get to riots and revolution. I think about 40% of the monthly budget on food, which we've seen not that long ago in places like Greece.
in recent years. In fact, look, I don't know if I can. I'm going to add Juliet here and grab her while I can. Juliet.
Hello, hi all. I
Hi, Juliet.
apologize. I've been having some serious technical difficulties. I got in before, but I wasn't hearing anyone. So,
but you know what? We're only too pleased to have you here.
thank you.
Not at all. Now, I don't know if you've been following the conversation. We've been talking about the tendency towards the prices of property racing up. Also, more importantly, that we're tending towards generation rent and how that will affect moving forward. Can you throw some commentary in there from your perspective?
What again, I think a lot of this, you've got people who are wanting to get onto the property market. You've got a lot of investors who are wanting to get out there and start developing again. So rumors have it that property prices are coming down, interest rates are coming down, and that can only be a positive thing for both, for everyone in the industry, but for both buyers and lenders.
Right, and you've been seeing this from the front lines yourself, I guess.
I have. I mean, I've had discussions with some of my lender clients, and they've sort of said, look, we're starting to get really, really busy with inquiries. People are feeling a little bit more confident. They're willing to get their toes, wet, or willing to take that level of risk. And so, in the next coming weeks, there is, it's likely to have an onflow of mortgage instructions, mortgage completions, purchases, and things. So, last week was a bit of a trying time for people. It always is at the beginning of the year, where people assess where they're at, but it's looking more positive.
Right, well, silver linings. We were talking about them only the other day, Hamish. But what worries me is there's still this black hole of searching, that little bit where they've started the process, they've gotten to the point of knowing the property they want, they perhaps even got the mortgage offer, and then it slipped into a black hole.
Yeah. Oh yes. There is, and I mean, what is quite interesting is, which is not the topic we're meant to be speaking about, IT and how IT is sort of helping.
I was going to take us over to that. I was going to say, how does IT help reduce this time?
That's too big a topic. I think we might have to sort of close it on that particular sort of point, because it can make a significant difference, but it can also cause tremendous disasters, as we noticed the tail end of November, when we do get hacking going on, when we do get sort of the whole system sort of crashing out. But what is great to actually sort of see, and Juliet will sort of back me up here in terms of what she says, the number of solicitors who dived in there to help rescue the situation. And again, these were people, they took it upon themselves to actually dive in to help people get out of that particular sort of situation, in spite of what the internet had done.
Yes.
Where it's back down to getting the right people working for you, which I think those of us present, those experts here today demonstrate. Get those right experts behind you working for you. And I guess we need to now speak about our topic of conversation for next week. Perhaps we ought to speak about the impact of IT then, that we didn't get to today.
I think we've got another. I would like to, if everybody's still willing, another 5-6 minutes. And
right.
And if everybody's available, because we've missed out on having the good counsel of Juliet. So I'd like to have her reaction to the fact that there has been some relatively ridiculously crazy IT related issues that have had an extra pressure on an already beleaguered marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gone are the days when you have the sort of letters coming through the post. Everyone's on email. Everything's digitalized. You're on the land registry's website. You can download an office copy in less than a minute. Everything is computerized. And a lot of firms, especially because of COVID, they've gone paperless. And everything was dependent on the computer systems. So when the computers and the electronics and the IT works really well, it's amazing. But when you have cyber attacks and no one's catering for that, it can just throw spanner in the works, so to speak, because no one was prepared for it. And here you had the tail end of November, this cyber attack on certain IT systems, and solicitors, especially the conveyancing ones, were forced to create files by printing out paperwork, etc., because there were homeless people. There were people waiting to go into their properties, and because of this cyber attack, the information just wasn't available. So one of the things the Law Society has said is that it's really important to have a backup. So yes, it's all good and well to have all of this technology working for you, but you need to thread carefully. So have a proper backup. Potentially have your information stored elsewhere. So while it's stored on this IT system, perhaps some other form of the cloud, so that it's available to you. And one of the key things that's in discussion now is ensuring that your professional indemnity cover covers cyber attacks, because people will sue you and they will claim damages if they've suffered loss. And this is not in everyone's contemplation.
But
so
this is just another form of consequential loss, isn't it?
Absolutely. But it's not one of those things that we ever thought about. You think you've got a bunch of paper files held somewhere and there's a fire and you've lost those files. That the cyber attacking, if you're at home and you click on an email and it turns out to be a cyber spam email, you can actually lose money from your bank account while sitting at home because you've clicked on that link. So we've got to thread carefully. We've got to look at, people have got to get training, especially in solicitors firms. We've got lots of training in terms of identifying these types of phishing emails, etc. It's really important to educate yourself, because while technology has done amazingly well to speed up the process, there are still flaws and we're still learning. And these cyber security criminals are just getting smarter. So it's really important to arm yourself with the right tools.
I'm almost scared to ask, Chris, how has IT played a factor with you, especially in regard with cybercrime?
In regards to cybercrime, it's not. It's accelerating.
You and I have never discussed this at all. So this is, has it affected you at all?
Yes, of course. I mean, it's been able to, for us to accelerate our business exponentially using IT.
Good.
So yeah,
Right,
there are huge benefits to it. But yeah, I'm fully behind Juliet in having a disaster recovery plan, where most people don't think about how they implement it; they just go and use it, which is fine. But yeah,
doesn't it sound a bit onerous having to? I mean, with you've got a multitude of different locations and theoretically lots and lots of potential digital legal documents and otherwise. What you're suggesting, Juliet, is we have backups of them all in paper base. Is that what you're suggesting, or just
not necessarily paper-based, but have a backup somewhere else, or an alternative backup that should you need to print those papers, you're able to. So there are probably other offline or sort of like cloud-based type systems where you can store that data and not just rely on your computer management system or whoever's the supplier of your computer management, because that's not foolproof. And that was evident
with all the Chinese walls that suffer that go around the legal strictures that you have to work under. I'm almost scared to ask, Elliot, how this could be affecting you. I would have thought that mortgage fraud, etc., is going to become rife in this kind of environment.
Yeah, a lot of a lot of the issues that you get from mortgage fraud is more of something which it's down to you as an advisor to detect, like if something looks amiss on the case or something doesn't look right. But yeah, you are correct that a lot of lenders are sending out communications saying there are more cases of fraud and things like that you can miss, but that's just about attention to detail and things like that. The sort of main sort of issues that I've come across, especially recently, is the rise in phishing emails where someone is pretending to be a conveyancer and asking the client for the deposit. I've seen that in the last 6 months 3 times. So that's the main one. But a lot I think a lot of the issues that can cause problems can be overcome by sort of training and having a policy in place, because when you look at statistics on what causes a lot of data breaches and things, a lot of it is human error. Is someone clicking the email that they shouldn't, entering the password somewhere they shouldn't. If you're using the appropriate like security VPNs and things like that, then a lot of the time you can be protected, but you just have to be very careful with what emails you're responding to and where you're logging in.
I mean, as an ex-IT person, I would say 95% of all these problems are due to someone clicking on a link they perhaps shouldn't have clicked on, and as opposed to the actual software failing. Hamish, I'm going to bring it back to you, sir, because I'd like you to have the last few words before we wind this up. And I thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be part of this. Ever since Hamish mentioned the fact that this might be a good idea to do, I've thought that having all these minds there, having our mastermind covering all of this, we could address a whole series of topics. Hamish, the last few thoughts perhaps from you on this idea.
I'll just mention one of the amusing experiences which brings together what we're saying about IT. And I perhaps shouldn't do it, but I will bring up the subject of the Wondrous Land Registry whilst we're speaking on the matter. Somebody put in an electronic application on the 21st of December to register their property, and they were absolutely overwhelmed to actually get a response by the 2nd of January. Now, when you think this is an electronic application, should it be going through automatically? One would have hoped so. Now, in fairness, Land Registry are taking up to 2 years with processing some of their registration. So possibly it's something to get excited about. But one would hope that, as Juliet sort of implied there, that when you press the buttons and send that information through, straight back to you almost immediately should be that there's a registration document. But yes, it's helping a great deal. But let's be wary.
Well, look, thank you very much for taking the time out today. This has been Property Quorum. We'll be back hopefully next week on the same day. That's a Thursday, approximately around 10 o'clock, give or take. We're always going to be beset by technical issues. This is the modern world after all. But I would like to thank each one of you for being here today, and we look forward to discussing more issues in the Property Quorum. Bye-bye now.